I recommend a few books per year. Some of those are targeted at a certain group of viewers because some books are mainly relevant for a specific audience. But occasionally, there's a book that everyone needs, at least everyone who watches my channel. And here's one of those books, The Critical Quran by Robert Spencer. How do I know that Robert Spencer's Critical Quran is a masterpiece? Two ways. First, it's by Robert Spencer. Robert only puts out extremely high quality content, especially when it's a project like this. Second, true story, I put together a little test before I started reading. I decided that I would read the first chapter, Surat Al-Fatiha, but that before reading, I would make a mental list of the points that definitely needed to be included in the commentary. Robert's main focus for the past 2 decades has been on jihad, but there are a lot of important problems in the Quran that have nothing to do with jihad, so I wanted to know if Robert was going to cover them. Those of you who've had a lot of discussions or arguments with our Muslim friends over the years may know what the main problems with Surat Al-Fatiha are. I made a mental list of 4 things that were most important before I went to the chapter in the Critical Quran. Here's what I came up with before going to the text. 1. Muhammad's companion, Ibn Masud, didn't believe that Surat Al-Fatiha is supposed to be in the Quran. The Quran is supposed to be Allah speaking to man, not man speaking to Allah. But Surat Al-Fatiha is a prayer to Allah. So Ibn Masud concluded that this chapter shouldn't be in the Quran. This is a massive problem because Muhammad told his followers, if you want to learn the Quran, learn it from Ibn Masud. And Ibn Masud had a different Quran from the one Muslims have today. 2. Surat Al-Fatiha is a prayer. But normally in the Quran, when Allah is telling human beings to say something, He begins with the word say. He says, say this. But Surat Al-Fatiha doesn't begin with say this, which means that since the Quran is Allah's eternal speech, Allah has been reciting a prayer for all eternity. Why is this relevant? Well, Surat Al-Fatiha says, praise be to Allah, and guide us to the straight path. So for all eternity, Allah has been praising Himself and asking Himself to guide Himself to the straight path. Very confusing. 3, there's a textual variant in verse 4. Most Muslims are still convinced that there are no textual variants in the Quran, so there's a refutation of their belief in verse 4. Finally, verse 7 asks Allah not to guide the people who are praying to the path of those who have earned His anger or of those who have gone astray. But those 2 phrases, those who have earned your anger and those who have gone astray, refer specifically to Jews and Christians. This is important because churches have had interfaith services where Muslims have the Christians recite this prayer. And if you don't understand what the prayer means, it's actually a prayer not to be a Jew or a Christian. So those are the 4 issues I thought needed to be included in the commentary on Surat Al-Fatiha. What did I find when I opened the Critical Quran and started reading? Here's the introduction to Surat Al-Fatiha. Right here, towards the end, we find, yet in an indication of the fluidity of the Quranic text in the early days of Islam, Abdullah ibn Masud, one of Muhammad's companions, did not even have this surah in his version of the Quran. Other early Islamic authorities also expressed reservations about its inclusion. So, Robert points out the Ibn Masud problem, but also notes that other early Muslims had a problem with the first chapter of the Quran. Next paragraph. To be sure, this surah does not fit in with the rest of the Quran in that it is in the voice of the believer offering prayer and praise to Allah, not Allah addressing Muhammad. Islamic orthodoxy has it that Allah is the speaker in every part of the Quran. So with Al-Fatiha, the believer must accept that the deity is explaining how he should be prayed to without explaining directly that that is what he is doing. So Muslims have to assume that Allah wants them to say this even though it's Allah speaking, meaning that Allah has been reciting a prayer from all eternity. Looks like Robert's 2 for 2 so far. Then we have the surah. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful, praise be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Compassionate, the Merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment. You do we worship, you do we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not of those who have earned your anger, or of those who have gone astray. We go to the comments and we find more about the problem of Allah reciting this prayer. In Islamic theology, Allah is the speaker of every word of the Quran. Some have found it strange that Allah would say something like, "Praise be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds." But Islamic tradition holds that Allah revealed this prayer to Muhammad early in his career as a prophet, which began in the year 610 AD when he received his first revelation from Allah through the angel Gabriel, a revelation that is now contained in the Quran's 96th surah, so that the Muslims would know how to pray. So we've got the problem and the standard Muslim response to the problem. Then we have a note on verse 4. Instead of Master of the Day of Judgment, the Warsh Quran has King of the Day of Judgment. That's the textual variant I was looking for, but there are notes on other textual variants that I didn't know about. And then we have a lengthy note on verse 7 that begins, Islamic scholars have often identified those who have earned Allah's anger as the Jews and those who have gone astray as the Christians. And it goes through the Muslim sources and commentaries and proves that this verse is actually condemning Jews and Christians. So this Quran has everything I would be looking for and more. And if it's got everything I would be looking for and more, it's probably got everything you would be looking for and more. So order a copy of the Critical Quran and either read the entire thing or use it to study some particular topics you're interested in, or keep it handy for discussions when someone brings up a verse and you want to make sure someone's not trying to deceive you. The link is in the description box. Order a copy and join Robert Spencer and David Wood in exposing 14 centuries of deception.